All right. So then, well, I mean, what qualifies that? And I would agree with you, but what qualifies those kinds of questions as particularly good? And
I think they're
what?
universal. What is suffering?
Wow.
Yeah, I think they're
Okay.
universal. I don't think they're like, my favorite television show is this, or I had a tuna fish for this, or I think part of the problem, let's go back to this question of what's the problem with individualism. I think a lot of individualism becomes expressing of beliefs, and beliefs become like consumer products that one dishes on
Hmm.
one plate to be seen with. There's a great line by Neil Postman, and Neil Postman says, keep this line with you. He says, you'll find it to be of great use to you. When somebody asks you something, you say, to tell you the truth, I don't have enough information to give you a well-informed opinion, so I don't have one. It's funny. You almost never
Wow.
hear that. You almost never hear the person who
Yeah.
says, you know what, I actually am not well-formed enough to have an opinion. Most people with this whole prerogative to think for themselves, they think, well, why do I have to be well-informed? Just express your belief. The notion that you're supposed to be well-informed in order to speak is eroding because anybody thinks that it must be important because they said it.
Hmm. All right. Well, then here I want to give you a chance to put me in my place because I come from a background where I had one particular professor. I went through college as a Skinnerian, as a behaviorist. I mean, it was hard determinism, whatever else. My last semester, I took a logic class from an Aristotelian, a classicalist, he called himself, and he built his logic class not to introduce us to formal logic, but to subvert us, is his word, from the academic whatever, I forget what he called it, the academic scheme of this positivist sort of thing that he saw. In that, I approach problems from a what I think is an intuitive, logical basis, in which what you're saying might. I mean, this is why I have to paint myself into what you're targeting here, is to say that you have this body of knowledge out there that can be learned, and then you have this idea that, wait a second, all you got to do is just know the idea and then work with it logically. And if in fact logic is innate, then perhaps all the reading is not necessary. Now, what would you say to me or someone like me who was in your class with this kind of idea?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd say a lot of things. First, it was hard to follow exactly what your argument was there. How much of it was an argument, or how much of it was you trying
None of it
to
I don't
look
think was
for
an
a
argument. I
continued?
think, no, I don't think any of it was an argument, other than just to say that if, what would you, do you believe problems are solved through a basis of knowledge, or is it solved through a logical process that is intuitive to the human being?
Well, let me try to back up.
Sure.
Monday night, we were going to do a meeting, and I couldn't meet. I was at a talk downtown with business professionals on this tar piece on is Google making us stupid. I don't know if you saw it, but there's all this talk about Google and the new information revolution and digital age. And it's funny because
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something about the way knowledge is distributed. I think there was a time, and it was book culture, where the individual really reigned supreme. You're seeing right now, you're witnessing the loss of the steady erosion of privacy of the private individual. There's a
Mm-hmm.
rise of living one's life out in the public. And so I think knowledge is being distributed in very different ways. And so, yeah, I think you're right that there are changing models of how problems will get solved, how people will deal with various situations. But I don't think I'm very skeptical of the idea that there is a method that will help people to cure all that ails them. And I also think that ideas aren't just things that we want for what they do. I think ideas are some of the tastiest fruits that this planet has. See, now we're back into the question of what does it mean to be human. Eudaimonia, as espoused by Aristotle, the happiness or the life that we were to be, after, it's that the life of contemplating ideas, of contemplating the highest ideas, that was better than watching a good sitcom. That was better than having a fun chip and a tasty soda. I think
Mm-hmm.
the notion here is that that we don't want just ideas. I mean, they're not just to solve problems. It's that you're a human and celebrate your ability to think. You're open to ideas.
Mm-hmm. Now, why would that be important then? I mean, does it tell us about the human being to say that we're interested in ideas? I mean, perhaps this is the question of what is it to be human? What does that imply?
Yeah.
I mean, what ultimately does that imply?
Look at all the contestation, for example, over the altered states of consciousness stuff. The people who are polarized around Terence McKenna, whether you think that altered states of consciousness and drugs are, part of the origin of consciousness, or do you think that that's dangerous for people? Should people not do it? I think there are many people who get involved in the drug culture because they're artists. There are other people who it's a quick, easy way to get ideas. It's like there are idea junkies, and the drugs are the vehicle. I mean, the drugs aren't really what they're junked out on. They're junked out on the states of mind and the idea states that come with the drugs. But I think people are idea junkies. I think we love a good movie if it helps you think. But I don't think it's everyone. I mean, I guess I would agree. Like, look at your channel. I look at my channel, a Matt's channel. These are not the most well-subscribed channels on YouTube. It's the fart channel and the gaff and you know what I mean? It's all this sort of giggle stuff. There's always going to be a lowest common denominator. But I think that partly is exacerbated by everyone's entitled to just have their own thought and all this kind of stuff that we promote. I think if more people would be willing to be humbled into saying, wow, I'm part of a grand mystery, and there's so many people like me but who lived before me. I wonder if they have any wisdom that I could recover from them and then get into that. But instead, it's like out of fear. The information overload is so extreme that I stave off the fear of handling it by just saying it's all irrelevant. And then that way I don't have to reckon with all the problems of if I'd open that door, it would seem like it would be never ending just listening and learning for me. So I think people just say I don't want to deal with it.
No, I agree, actually. I think that would be, absolutely. All right, so
but that's a quick to judge, and that's pretty immature. It's quick to judge that way.
Judge in what way? To say that?
Yeah, well, they should. I mean, they should say, well, hey, maybe it's not okay. Maybe I don't have to end the conversation with my participation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people want to have the last word. They want to have the first word and then the last one too.
That might be, though. I think ultimately any of that is motivated from the same desire to know, and I mean what you were talking about earlier, that we're interested in ideas.
No, it's the same desire to think that the individual is more important than the collective. When people realize that the collective is the whole and the individual is just a part of the whole, it becomes very different than when they think the individual is the whole and then the society is a different whole. I think there is a radical sense.
Well, and this is actually the point of contention that I appreciate you voicing, because it would seem to me that the only reason a collective could have any value is because of individual contribution. I mean, genuine, unique contribution possible only by an individual. And from that, if in fact the collective is more valuable than the individual, it is because of these cumulative contributions. What do you say to that?
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but the logic that you did, so you just did the maneuver where you sort of created the asocial individual. You're never unique in a non-social way.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. Give me an example of what you mean by this.
When you set up your scenario, you rewove it in a way as if the individual came out of a vacuum, and they don't.
Well, how do you know that?
So
I don't know if I'm saying that, but how do you know that?
How do I know
I don't know
that?
where I came from. I know that there is, I know that my perception of ideas is independent, at least, from other people's perception of ideas, because ideas or beliefs or worldviews are different. Could you grant me that much?
I guess I can't.